Welcome to Santa Barbara Talks with Josh Molina. It's my pleasure today to be here with Santa Barbara City Councilman Oscar Gutierrez, who has been just sort of this amazing success story the last few years. With district elections, was able to run and win on the west side and bring really strong representation to a community, to the neighborhoods that had not been seen before. And now you're doing great work citywide. So it's really my pleasure to have you on the show today to talk about a wide variety of city issues. How are you doing today, Oscar?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me, Josh. I appreciate what you do.
Yeah, thank you. Oscar, I want to dive right in and talk to you a little bit about what's ahead next week, or I should say Tuesday, is the swearing in of new mayor Randy Rouse. Also the swearing in for new terms for three other council members. So it's going to be a shift a little bit, I guess, certainly in terms of tone and culture. Randy, of course, was on the council for 9 years. So sort of like, well, welcome back. It's not like we got a new person, but we did get a big shift, I think, at least in terms of perception of City Hall, with Cathy Murillo leaving and now Randy Rouse in. You worked with Cathy for years, you worked with Randy for years. What is your thought expectation with Randy coming in? How is the council going to change?
Um, I am I'm staying pretty optimistic as of now about it because I did work with him for over a year and a half when I was first elected and before he termed out. And he's a very cordial, very professional person. And when we were on the council together, he still owned and ran the Paradise Cafe, so he was pretty busy with that. But now that he's retired, I feel like he's going to be more accessible than he was when he was originally on council. So I'm actually kind of looking forward to that. And obviously we don't agree necessarily on political issues, but we worked well together while we were on council. So like I said, I'm staying optimistic, and I think everyone else is as well.
Yeah, I mean, a few years ago, you probably couldn't imagine the scenario where Cathy Murillo would not win re-election, and then the new mayor would be Randy Rouse. It would, at least for me, it seemed like, well, of course Cathy's going to get reelected, and Randy may come back someday, but Cathy would get another 5-year term. Um, what do you think of what happened with the mayor and sort of this shift, this change? Obviously, I'm not here to badmouth her, but it's sort of undeniable that she lost support from the first few times she ran till when she did this November. What happened from your perception?
You know, a lot's changed in our city, in our state, our country, and in our world. Obviously the pandemic and the George Floyd healing justice movement really changed people's perspective on a lot of things, and that also affected us on the council. And and I feel like with that massive kind of paradigm shift, a lot of people kind of changed their priorities and who they wanted to represent them, and it showed in the election, the way the election played out. And yeah, it's been an interesting few years, I could say. And and I feel like most of us are adapting and evolving and listening to what people are saying and thinking, and trying to reflect that, because that's kind of like what our purpose is. We're supposed to be listening and trying to do our best to what the public wants. And yeah, the election was definitely, I mean, for me personally, obviously I'm a supporter of Cathy. I was saddened by it, but that's the political world. That's democracy, and we just gotta accept it and move forward.
What will you miss most about working with Mayor Murillo? She did a lot for you when you ran in terms of campaigning on the West Side. She's a West Side resident and very popular on the West Side. And she's been supportive of you while on the council in terms of just giving you sort of the support that you need on some issues as a new member. What are you going to miss about your relationship working with her?
Yeah, I've known Cathy for a while. She when she was a reporter, I was working for TVSB, and that's how we got to know each other. And then she's also my neighbor. She lives about a block away from me. And then I decided to enter the political realm, and she was kind of my guide through that. So I look up to her, as a mentor, and and I'm gonna miss just being able to go to her and tell her how I feel about certain things, and she could tell me her perspective and her advice on how to address it, and and I'm just gonna miss being able to just like walk across the hall and go into her office and just kind of chat with her about certain issues. I'm gonna miss her little anecdotes and jokes that she would tell, that kind of added levity to the situation when I was feeling stressed or frustrated. But she's still gonna be my neighbor, so she's still gonna be nearby, and I assume that she's still gonna be pretty active in one way or another. But yeah, I'm kind of excited for her to see what she ends up doing.
Yeah, she definitely has options. So it'd be interesting to see what the next move is. One thing I wanted to ask you about, is this rent control issue. We know that it came up as one of the last items on the agenda with Mayor Murillo, and I think the direction was, go get us data. What would it look like? Come back to us. Now Randy's going to be there. You're a supporter, obviously, of capping rents. What was it, 2% plus CPI was
Yeah.
the final thing that was discussed. Are you worried that with Cathy leaving and now Randy there, and it's already a contentious, controversial issue, that project, that effort's not going to happen now?
I am worried, yeah, because Cathy was that fourth vote, and now she's gone, and Randy's there. So unless we could, you know, persuade one of the other three council members, yeah, it unfortunately won't go any further. But who knows? Maybe one of them will see that it's worth something to implement in order to keep it more affordable for hardworking people and families here.
Yeah, I guess it's going to be a lot of hearings, meetings. People from the public are going to be talking, and it's going to have need a lot of discussion to move people in any of those directions. Let's talk about you and your time on the council. You and I have talked about this. We did a previous podcast where we touched on these issues, and we've talked about it just one-on-one. But I want to talk to you about you and your role at City Hall. Okay. It's no secret. You've said it to me. You've said it to others that, at times it's been sort of tough to be able to interject yourself into the culture of City Hall, to feel as though you're completely welcome. And it's been sort of a struggle, a little bit of an effort for you to do that. And, you've had some microaggressions directed in your way, passive aggression. What's it like for you to be on the city council? And I guess by way of context, Cathy Murillo was the first Latina ever elected to the city council. So think about that. And she was obviously then the first Latina mayor. We've had Hispanic Latino men on the council, but it's predominantly been white men, white women, retired, who've served on the council. And so with your election, you're part of that change, that evolution, and district elections was designed to do that, to let's have the council reflect what the actual community looks like. Can you talk a little bit about your successes, your challenges? How has it been for you to try to be able to fit into that very dominant culture at City Hall?
It's been a growing experience. Even with me, it's been over 3 years that I've been on council, and I've had to learn how to respond to things just personally. sometimes I come off too aggressive, and sometimes I come off um flippant, and those are just kind of observations that people have shared with me. And I have to go back and look and say, in the moment it seemed like I was coming off okay, but then when I look at it and I hear close people saying like, nah, you kind of came off a little heavy handed, I have to acknowledge that and try to just kind of read the room a little bit, kind of read myself a little bit before I respond to things, and sometimes just give people the benefit of the doubt, and try not to take things too personally. And yeah, so it's been a learning experience, and there have been moments where I felt like, okay, how come this person's being treated this way but I'm not? But again, like, that unfortunately that's kind of like our world, our society, that just sometimes happens, and sometimes it's on purpose and sometimes it isn't, and it's just this constant, like, confusing, like, second guessing, like, is this what's happening, is it not, should I be responding this way, should I not? But for the most part, city staff is pretty professional, and the management has really, especially in the last 2 years, put in a lot more effort to be equitable and diverse, and I've noticed it, and I've appreciated it, so I am staying hopeful about how things are changing and progressing, but I'm not necessarily just accepting the way that it is, because we can always do better, and on an individual level, and also as an organization, governmental body level as well. So yeah, it's been tough at times, but people have definitely had it worse than me, and I can only keep going.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, that's something I can relate to is, I can't tell you how many times I've been told, whoa, you sound really aggressive. Okay. Was that a joke? People misreading you. And, the fact is, if we were who we are with light brown hair and a Hawaiian shirt on, people don't say that to those people. They just don't. But there's this like, oh, they're getting angry now. They're sort of like they're expecting these things. So it never ends. You just kind of have to keep doing what you do. But you're right. Looking at yourself too is you have to know what works and what doesn't work. And if you keep doing the things that don't work, you're not going to be successful. At the same time, you also need to educate people to not judge you on things that they're misreading. What about the public? Can you share a little bit of, do you get any nasty emails? What kind of things do people say when they think that, no one's watching, even though emails are public record? I mean, I know I get nasty emails from people based off of things that have nothing to do with my work, so what about you?
Yeah, I can speak for myself that yeah, I've received a lot of correspondence and messages, comments from people that are very discriminatory and prejudiced and bigoted and racist, and it's sad and frustrating, but I chose to take this role. I knew that was part of this responsibility that I was taking on. That people are going to come after you, and they're going to come after you for valid reasons, and they're going to come after you for non-valid reasons. And yeah, one example is the way we're dealing with the pandemic. We have people saying you're not doing enough, and then we have people saying that we're part of this grand conspiracy to control people and kill people, and it's just disturbing, to be honest. And I just have to respond to them professionally, because I know that if I give them like an attitude, or if I come at them dismissively, it'll just enrage them more, and they'll keep going. So I just say, thank you for sharing your opinion. We're doing the best we can, something like that. And for the most part, they leave us alone, but some of them just keep going and going and going. And yeah, there have been a couple times where I've had to call the police and report it because they've threatened me, and I'm not the only one either. A few of my other council members have had to to let the police know that they've been threatened. And again, it's just one of those realities that, people warned me about when I was campaigning. Like, be prepared that if you want to take on this responsibility, this is what you're gonna have to face. So again, I was well aware of it, and it's just the reality of the position that I chose to take.
Yeah. Let's talk about your policies a little bit. You more so than anyone is most likely to bring up diversity, in terms of decisions on the council. You'll ask for data. You will ask for whether you've included the various types of populations, in the research. So you have been very direct about that, and I think that's why people elected you. Recently, we were talking about some of the changes on the 400 block of State Street. I recently wrote about J.J.s Diner closing. We know that block was cut off from about 9 or 10 other blocks that were closed down to cars. So there's still vehicular traffic that's in your district, at least, half of it, half of the 400 block, the side facing the highway. Can you talk a little bit about what are the things that you are focused on as a council member? And then what's going on with the 400 block and how can we help some of those businesses? It's sort of a mishmash. There's a lot of old businesses that are there, new businesses trying to make it. It's got a perception that it's, not the best block in Santa Barbara. So let's talk a little bit about sort of what your goals are going forward.
Yeah, I ever since I got elected, I met with several of those business owners and listened to them and what they felt. And even before the pandemic, they felt like the city had ignored their block because the word seedy has been associated with the 400 block, which I find a little bit offensive, because it is one of the oldest blocks of State Street. There's a lot of history there, and it's very eclectic. There's a lot of diversity on that block of the business owners and the businesses, and yeah, if you go down there now, what happened at J.J.'s, that was heartbreaking. I went to high school with J.J. and they and he was kind of like a role model. We were all like really impressed with him, the way that he worked really hard to start his own business, and yeah, it just broke my heart that he wasn't able to make it. But if you go to the business owners there, they'll talk about how they don't feel like the city's really paid attention to them as much as the other blocks of State Street. And obviously that was kind of proven when the pandemic hit and we shut down like 12 blocks of State Street except for that one block. And the city's explanation is that they need that block open so that the flow of traffic can be efficient and it doesn't cause problems along Gutierrez and Haley, and mainly because of the first responders. They need to be able to get from the beach to State Street and vice versa fairly smoothly, and that block has been left open. But I know I've offered suggestions about making Gutierrez and Haley two-way streets again, like it was years ago, to try to alleviate that traffic situation. The city staff came to me and said that that would take years of planning and hundreds of thousands of dollars of repainting the streets and signage and such. But it's just kind of frustrating to hear them say that because we shut down 12 blocks of State Street in about a week. So it's kind of like how much longer are we going to wait? And obviously there's a bit of transition with city staff and department heads right now, so there's a lot of things that are kind of being left on the shelf until things kind of settle. But those businesses on the 400 block, they really need the help. They're struggling, and they should, like some of the business owners have said, they should just be treated equitably like the other blocks and be allowed to shut down the block so that they could have their businesses out in the street. There's a few music venues, there's a few restaurants, and they could definitely use it. And I'm doing my best. We had a meeting. It was soon after we shut down the street. It was a few of the business owners and the property owners of the 400 block with city staff and first responders to try to come up with a with a plan on what to do. And after that meeting, they allow them to have the parklets. And but they need more than that. So hopefully we can do something soon. And I'm looking forward to what the State Street Committee comes up with, because that's like I've said it before, that's the gateway to State Street.
Yeah.
And we need to treat it like that. We really need to polish it up, and there's a couple businesses on there that could put a little more effort to make their storefronts look a little bit better. In particular, that abandoned shop that's been there for I think 18 years now, almost 20 years. It's old enough to vote. It should. I just don't know what those property owners are doing, but it's been boarded up, for a long time, and that could be something, but it just makes it look blighted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's been talk of that vacancy tax. I think there's some people who are in support of that. You might be one of them. I don't know, but that would be one of those to address those kinds of issues, right? A vacancy tax.
Yeah, and that is obviously a bit controversial. I've talked to Randy about it, and from what he said, he feels very uncomfortable punishing everyone because of a few bad apples. That that location in particular is particularly bad because it's been 18 years and they've done nothing with it. So I've asked several questions about what the city can do, but they've told me that since the property owners make sure that it's kept up to a certain degree, that there's really nothing they could do about it. So it just sits there empty, and looking bad. But yeah, we got to figure something out because what we're doing now isn't necessarily working.
As a reporter and observing the politics of City Hall and the City Council and covering it every week and covering a variety of meetings, one of my frustrations with district elections is the feeling that not every time, and not going to name names, but sometimes district representatives can be really focused on their district, okay? And then when it comes to kind of a citywide thing, maybe they're deferential to whatever council member that particular might have ownership of that particular project. So, if it's a Westside thing, whatever Oscar thinks is good, we'll go for it. If it's an Eastside thing, et cetera. And that could be a little frustrating, but let me ask you, what do you see your role as? Are you an elected official for the Westside residents? Do you want to be known in San Roque? Do you want to be known in Samarkand, on the Mesa, as a city council member for this city? What do you see your role? Who exactly are you serving as a Westside council representative?
Yeah, so we're elected by district, but we're supposed to serve everybody. And one thing that I told myself when I chose to take this position was that I was going to do as much as I could to hear everyone out and to serve as many people as I could. So one thing that I do, almost to a fault, is I respond to every message that I get, whether it's an email or phone call or social media post or whatever. And because of that, I've gotten several residents from all over the city message me saying, you're the only one that responds to me, and sometimes I sit and wonder whether it's worth me spending all that time responding to each and every person. But then when people who I've never met say that to me, that's when I'm like, okay, it is worth it, because this one person isn't losing faith in their local government, and I try to do that with everyone. I actually asked IT, how many emails have I responded to since I've been on council? And they told me that in 2019, my email got full, so I deleted everything. So at some point before 2019, all that data is lost. But since 2019, I've responded to over like 15,000 emails.
Wow.
So that's a lot, So and it's probably more than that because of me deleting all those emails beforehand. But yeah, and that's not even counting all the social media. I try to respond to everybody when I can, and I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Reddit, Nextdoor, and a lot of people. I try to meet them where they are, where how they choose to communicate. So some people like to communicate only via Nextdoor. Some people like to communicate only via Reddit. So yeah, there's a lot more messages that I've responded to other than just my city email. But yeah, I'm here to service everybody. I'm I'm just trying to fulfill my role as best I can.
Yeah. Let's talk about you. That's a good sort of transition here. You're a local kid, okay? We hear all kinds of voices in the community. They're all valid. They're all just as important as anyone else is. But you're not somebody who came here from other part of the country, went to UCSB, and then decided to sort of make this your community. Like, you're here, you are this community. People like you who grew up here have been driven out of this community by other people who come in and have access to more wealth and can pay these higher rents. But you've been able to stay. So can you talk a little bit about your life here? You grew up on the West Side. I think you live in the house that you grew up in. You went to San Marcos. What has your journey been like? What's your personal story of how you got here?
It's interesting because I grew up feeling like I was lower income, and I was Santa Barbara standards, right? But then when I talked to my cousins who lived down south and up north, and I just remember growing up with them, like when I would go to visit them, man, it was like night and day. Like my quality of life growing up in Santa Barbara, even as considered poor in Santa Barbara, compared to like in LA or up in the Bay, like it was night and day, and I have to constantly like check my privilege when I say things, that it's hard for me to live in Santa Barbara, like my friends make jokes like, oh yeah, you're from the mean streets of Santa Barbara, kind of sarcastically. But the ironic thing was, like, in the late 80s, I'm sure you remember, early 90s, that it was pretty rough on the east side and west side. Like I remember that there was like literally there were gang members who would hang out on street corners, and it got to the point where my parents didn't want me to leave the house unaccompanied, and it sucked because like I couldn't go to the Boys and Girls Club that's right down the street here on the west side because the gang members basically took it over when I was a kid, and they would only let in people that they liked, and it sucked, and I'd never want to see our community be like that again. It took a lot of years of people from around the community coming together to stop that, and to keep it from getting like that. So I want to make sure that the kids in this community don't face that they get obviously more opportunities than we had growing up. And serving with some of my colleagues on the city council, that's definitely a priority for them as well, because they remember what it was like to grow up here like that, and we've been putting in efforts to do that. I personally, like, I always grew up seeing certain privileged kids getting a lot more opportunities than I did. Like I had to fight for opportunities, and I had to make my own opportunities. So now that I'm older, I would always offer everybody that I meet, like, hey, if you want to tour the TV station, let me know. If you want to intern for the TV station, let me know. If you want a tour City Hall, let me know. If you want to intern for me, let me know. I'm constantly doing that to everyone I meet, just because like no one ever did that for me, growing up. Only a few people did. When I meet young people nowadays and they're asking me for advice, one thing I tell them is like, get as many mentors as possible, because it was my mentors that brought me up. It was my mentors that taught me things that weren't being taught in school, just kind of life lessons, like how to conduct myself, how to be professional, things like that. So that's what I'm trying to do now that, I'm 38, I'm not young anymore. Well, again, relatively, I don't feel young now that when I'm talking to teenagers, I'm just kind of like, I don't even know what you're saying half the time, So I'm just trying to
You need to get on TikTok. That's what.
Yeah, I recently just got on TikTok, and man, like, talk about another world. It's really fascinating because I'm a film major, so like a media major, so like I don't just watch media, I study it. So like when I'm on different platforms and I'm watching what's being produced nowadays, like it blows me away, of how far we've come just in the last couple of years. But yeah, I'm trying to pay it forward, and I'm trying to give more opportunities to people than I received growing up, and yeah, that's kind of what it was like for me growing up here. And I was definitely given a work ethic. Both my parents, like, they'd never had less than two jobs, and
What did your
and
parents do?
my dad was a gardener and a janitor. My mom was a housekeeper, and she worked for a variety of different companies around town in manufacturing. And both of them, when they were kids, they worked in fields. So yeah, that's the kind of mentality I had. My earliest memories were helping my dad out in the gardens and in other people's gardens, and working, cleaning out apartment buildings, or I mean office buildings in the evenings. So it was gardening during the day, office cleaning at night. So that kind of, like, work mentality has always been with me, and that's why I'm always like responding to emails and trying to come up with ideas and trying to network and work with people. I think that definitely stuck with me.
How old were you when you first went to Disneyland?
Man, I was definitely over 5 because I remember it. So yeah, and I've only been there like maybe half a dozen times, like maybe 6 times.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
I know. I mean, I just bring it up because there's so many things that are like rites of passage for a lot of people growing up. And you talk about your parents working in the fields. You talk about multiple jobs. I imagine you spent a lot of time at home alone. Sort of parenting yourself.
Yeah.
And these are things that tie into these institutional barriers that we have. It's why when we say when people say, well, why aren't you teaching them English and math in school? Why aren't you focusing on these things? And why is there an achievement gap? It's because school is only one part of that child's life. The other part of the life is where they live. And, in your case, you had hardworking parents, you had a stable situation, but still, you didn't have all the things that maybe some other people had. Whereas a lot of kids had it even worse, and so those little things that you take for granted, when you were growing up, on the west side, you obviously, your parents told you stay away from gangs. Okay, so what did you do for fun? What were, how did you have a lot of friends? You just kind of stick to your family? How did you navigate the world?
Yeah, luckily where I live on the west side, I was within walking distance of La Cumbre Junior High and Harding School. And back then the campuses were open. So
Mhm.
my friends and I would just stay at school. We'd play in the yard or on the playground until it got dark, and then we would go home. And that's one thing I've actually spoken to the school district several times about why the campuses are closed after school's out, because it's an outlet for it's literally an escape. Like, I couldn't even tell you how many times we ran to school when stuff got rough at home. And now without that escape, like I don't even know what the kids are doing now. I don't know where they go when they need to get away. And I've been trying to talk to them about, let's open up the campuses so that they have a place to go. And I understand there's security concerns. There's been a lot of bad things that have happened on the campuses when nobody was around, but I feel like it's time that we open it up. And yeah, it's I the other thing I would do is I would watch, movies and TV, and which wasn't necessarily healthy, but it kind of led me to the career path that I chose. And I would read comic books and stuff like that. But yeah, it was rough for a while on the west side, especially in the late '80s, early '90s.
Yeah, I get really annoyed when people make that joke. Oh, you grew up on the mean streets of Santa Barbara, which is very common for people to say. And yes, so happy it's not many other places in California and the country, which is, yes, by far worse. But If you are a member of that gang and you're a parent of one of those members who's been a victim of gang assault or homicide, it's just as important and just as serious. And we do have gangs, that sometimes the crimes rise to the level where the whole community is aware of it. Most of the time not, but there are people living day to day in these scenarios where they're very fearful, of various situations. And it's frustrating when people sort of look at the beach in Cabrillo Boulevard and Paseo Nuevo and say, you know, you don't have gangs here. It's like, well, you just aren't going where people live is, the issue. We may not have that in Montecito, but we do have that, on the east side and the west side. And, last year we had some, we had homicides, with young people. So you mentioned it, you're a film major, you went to UCSB, you watched a lot of movies growing up. Was that sort of your deal? How did you get into media? When your dad is, a gardener, he's working in the fields, your mom's a housekeeper, and then you're like tech, right? Tell me a little bit about your passion and your love for that.
Yeah, it started when, even as a child, I remember my dad was really into cameras. So he bought a camera to document our family, holidays and what have you. And when video cameras became a little more affordable, he bought a video camera. So when I was a kid, there was a video camera, and I would make little movies at home, using G.I. Joes or what have you. And then when I grew up or when I was going through high school, there was a video production class and I took it, and I really liked it, and I was getting compliments on the videos I was making. So then, you were saying about how people say oh, how come these kids aren't being taught at home or what have you. My parents didn't go to school. They didn't. They grew up in these small towns where only the rich went to school, and they weren't. So when we were growing up, my siblings and my parents had no idea how school worked. They just didn't. They had to learn how to read and write on the job, And so when we would get home, they weren't a resource for us to learn from because they had no idea. They didn't speak the language. They had to learn how to read and write in English and in Spanish just through working, So they couldn't really help us. So college wasn't something that was talked about very often, or if at all. Luckily I'm the youngest of four, so my siblings had learned and I learned from them. And my two oldest sisters, they went to college, and they were basically telling me how to apply for colleges, and they helped me do that. And I went to City College, and when they were asking me what do you want to do at City College, I said film, because I'm really into it. And I had volunteered for an organization where we recorded people telling their life story while I was in high school. It was a requirement. We had to complete community service hours in order to graduate. And that's what really propelled me, hearing these, I would meet these strangers, and then 3 hours later, I'd leave their house knowing their entire life story, and then I would edit the videos with pictures and their favorite music and then give it to their families when they passed away, So that's what kind of propelled me into going to college. And then I got into journalism while I was in college after the whole news press Jerry Roberts situation happened. The journalism program wanted to do the former journalist wanted to do a TV show, and I was directing that show. And then Guy Smith.
Was that the Don Hobbs, Rob Kuznia, Tom Schultz show? You did that show. Okay.
Yeah. So that's how I started into journalism. And then Patricia Stark reached out to me because she heard my name and said that they wanted to do a multimedia editor position for the City College newspaper, and I was the first multimedia editor. And we were doing, it's funny, we were doing this stuff, but back in 2007, because that's when it was. And it's cool now that everyone's doing it, but back then, I felt like I was pulling hair trying to convince people no, I'm people want to see this stuff, on the internet, So So yeah, that's how I got started in journalism, and then I transferred to UCSB, and I got my degree in film, and yeah, it's been a wild ride, and then because of my involvement in the community and all the stories and news coverage that we were doing, I got inspired to try to serve my community a little bit more, and ran for office.
Yeah. Yeah, so you were touched by Patricia Stark, as well. So many people have come through that program, you know, Cathy Murillo, had
Yeah.
Patricia Stark as a teacher, real hero and role model of mine, so did you spend a semester or a year on the channels? What did you
Oh,
do?
I was there for like 2 years, two and a
Oh, you're
half.
like me. You wanted to stay forever.
Yeah, no, it was fun. You know how it is. Like you made a lot of friends and you experienced a lot of cool stuff, Like when I was there, it's 2007. I left in 2009, almost 2010, and we covered the Obama elections, Like I got to cover when he came to City College to speak, and I got to shake his hand when he walked by. Like that was before he got elected, I thought he was just he was going to be a candidate, but then yeah, it was a cool moment. That wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for the channels, if it wasn't for Patricia. She's very underrated. I need to reach out to her. I haven't talked to her in a while.
Yeah, she's definitely the most impactful um, journalist that I've ever had in my life, and there's so many of people like that as well. But she doesn't have an ego. She doesn't need, she's just, I just gonna teach the students. I don't need to tell people I taught the students. I'm just gonna teach it and let them do their thing. So you went on to UCSB, and then you worked for TVSB, had a bunch of jobs, Life Chronicles you mentioned, and you ran for city council. Was that terrifying for you? I mean, I remember we had some conversations, and that must have been terrifying, right? Like putting yourself out there to
Yeah.
run, knowing that chances are you're going to fail. Winning is such a slim chance. What was that like, and how did you finally get yourself to do it?
Yeah, it was just the love for my community. As you know, I was directing Jerry Roberts' show,
Mhm.
and you all were covering the mayoral race, and interviewing all these elected officials and city officials, governmental officials from every level. And I was also working for Carpinteria City Hall at the time. I was in charge of broadcasting all their government meetings. So I was seeing a little bit of behind the scenes of how small town local government works, and and again, I was just I was volunteering for the Red Cross at the time, and that's when the Thomas Fire happened, and immediately after the election, and then the debris flow, and you know I just felt like I want to do more for my community. I want to serve on a grander scale than what I'm already doing. So then as we all know, we were talking about at the time who's going to take Cathy's seat now that she was elected mayor, and I just thought, maybe I should give it a try and see what happens. And yeah, it was scary because even though I'd been in that atmosphere, I guess you can say, for years, I was behind the camera. I was kind of like detached. Like I didn't feel like I was like on the other side, and especially growing up on the West Side, like my parents weren't that political. They voted, but like they never really talked too much about politics until like election day, basically. So it was something that was kind of like alien to me. But then I decided to step up and kind of get out of my comfort zone, because I before I ran for office, I was actually an introvert. I kind of just kept to myself and didn't really like put myself out there too much. But obviously, running for office, it's the opposite. You got to be out there. You got to be vulnerable, and it's been a learning curve for sure. I think we've all seen me kind of like sweat when I talk and stutter and stammer. But I definitely feel like I'm kind of getting over all of that, obviously, and feeling more comfortable in the position and in myself, and being able to talk a little more freely, and sometimes I talk a little too freely, but I'm trying to regulate that as well. So yeah.
We're not gonna bring up the high fire quote.
Yeah,
You already
that was a
explained
good
that.
one.
So you mentioned you're 38. You're going to run for a second term, I imagine, here in a couple of years. You you're going to be in your mid 40s, and kind of like termed out, on the council, at least for city council seats. I don't put you on the spot a little bit, but I mean, now that you are in politics and you're on the council and you clearly love it, responding to at least 15,000 emails, this isn't something that you fit in around the rest of your life. This is your life. Um, what's the future? Have you thought about like sort of where you're going to be at in 10 years as a guy in his mid 40s with tons of options and paths? I mean, how far do you want to take this as far as politics go?
As far as politics, I haven't really thought too much about it, because there's just so much to do in my current position now that that's what I'm focused on, so no, for me there's no greater plan. I kind of want to take it, one day at a time, and once it comes closer to the end, I'll see what options there are at then, because you know how it is, like sometimes there's somebody who moves on to another position, which leaves this position empty, or they get kicked out, or they get voted out, and all of a sudden there's like these opportunities that just kind of pop up out of nowhere. So I don't know. Right now it's just city council for me, is the West Side and the city overall. But we'll see what happens in a few years. If the people want me to continue serving them on another level, then I'll consider it.
Yeah. You mentioned that, your father passed away, a few years ago, and we've talked about a little bit about that one-on-one, but this is sort of a spiritual question here, but, you're a success story. You're a local kid, the son of immigrants who never went to school. And you even if you were not elected to the city council, you're a success story because, you've sort of flip things really quickly for your generation, and your success, but you are on the council. What do you think your father, if you were here, would tell you? What would he be thinking about you in terms of the sort of how proud he would be of where you're at, and you're only 38?
Oh man, that's a funny question. My dad was very extremely blue collar, like every job he had was manual labor. And I remember growing up, he would always tell me, like, be a mechanic, or be an air conditioner repair guy, because those guys always have work. They're always,
Mhm.
and they make a lot of money. And so, like, when I told him that I wanted to go into film, he kind of like scoffed, like, you're not really working with your hands and blah blah blah. And I'm like, yeah, you are. What are you talking about? And so now he would probably be like, yeah, of course you take a job where you're behind a desk all day. He'll probably give me a little grief about it. But he would definitely be proud. Because yeah, I don't like to compare, but like some of my family members, they didn't go down a good path in life, and it brought a lot of stress and grief to all of us, not just their immediate family, but all of us. We all felt bad for what had happened. So knowing that, I'm trying to do good and help my community, I think that would bring them happiness and pride, I think.
Yeah, well, my dad was a plumber, maintenance handyman, and I always say he worked with his hands, so I don't have to. I mean, you saw that work, right? Growing up, like I saw that work. I don't want to. If there's some
Yeah,
other thing I can do, I'd rather, because that is way harder than what I do. It's just so much harder. I don't want to do
for
that.
sure.
So they
Yeah,
made
and
those sacrifices for us.
oh, for sure. Yeah, and it took a toll on him. He died at 60. At 60,
Mhm.
all those hours, all that backbreaking work that he did, like it. That's why I say, like, my dad like gave his life for us, because he did. And the same with my mom. Like my mom's 70, but her body does, is really starting to show its age, and we constantly have to, like, we just put in a ramp, and we had to modify the bathroom so it's easier for her to move in and out, and that's just the reality of getting older. But it's because of how hard they had to work and to be able to provide for us.
Okay, well, Councilmember Gutierrez, I really appreciate your time, taking a few moments to kind of talk about what's ahead with politics and this sort of new council, this new direction, and sharing a little bit about sort of your policies and your personal story. It's very inspirational, and I think every time you do something like this and you tell people about how you got here, there's somebody watching who's you're going to affect, who you're going to touch, who's going to be inspired, who's going to say, I can do that too, and I think that's
Yeah.
really the importance of what you do every time you represent yourself publicly. So thanks a lot, and that's enough of the sweet talk, because come Tuesday I'll be watching everything you say and getting ready to quote you, so be careful.
I'll do my best. No, I want to thank you too. You're a coach and a teacher and a father, and and you don't have to be doing this. You don't have to put your name out there like you do, but you do. And again, just like seeing Josh Molina, like that's planting seeds in our community's consciousness, and hopefully it inspires other youths to want to speak up as well. And just another thing I want to say is that after seeing what happened to J.J.'s, like I do want to kind of let the community know, the local businesses know that my expertise is in film and video. So if there's any way I can help with producing some sort of like documentary or some kind of like video for your businesses, like please reach out to me, and I'd want to help you do that. So I just want to offer that.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you want to give your email here? They can find it on the internet, but what's your city? You want to give your personal email, or how do you want to do that?
I guess I could give out my personal one, which is Oscar Gutierrez .og@gmail.com.
Yeah, the original OG, and you're literally an OG, right, Oscar?
Yeah, literally.
All right. Okay. Good luck. Take care. Have a great day.
All right. Thank you. Bye.